Morning, fellow zombies. Are we alive yet? Are we awake yet? Emotionally screwed up and sleep deprived? Or are we the opposite? Somewhat. It's 1:17 in the morning. Actually, 1:18. Clock just clicked. Monday, the 6th of May, 2024. The Weaver, John C. Roseman, California. You're a zombie out here who's barely alive and barely awake. Sleep. Why did I get up? Well, I figured that the older I get, the worse it gets. Sometimes, no matter how many times the doctors would tell me that I would need to get sleep, if I hear it directly or indirectly. Yes, I do like the idea of sleeping. Only if the body can actually and the brain can actually allow me to do that. Even if I happen to have the light off and I will sleep, I'll still get up a few hours each time. Bladder's got to be relieved. But then again, I can't get back to sleep because I can't get myself settled. So I had to stay up for a bit. And this is my contention for a long while, apparently. I know there's going to be medications out there to help me sleep better, 68 hour again. What happens is this is going to be the standard normal until the time that my body decides to give out on me. Right. One screwed up thing after another. Okay. That being said, came across some articles that should have interested me a long time ago. And why didn't in the first place? Because I wasn't paying attention to it much. I was thinking about other things, like to get school situation taken care of, the registration, not to mention paperwork that needs to be sent in, which means I need to get a printer to get the paperwork put into manila envelopes, which means I need to get dial-a-ride set up for a ride tomorrow for the library. So I get over there, get the paperwork printed up, get it sent out, wait for a bit, and then take the dial-a-ride to get back home, and hope that I get registration going through the school. I want to make sure I get this thing and get a class or two so I can qualify for the registration for the next fall. I hate spending time away from school. It just drives me crazy, especially if I have to take the time necessary for mental health and physical health. It pisses me off because now I'm further and further behind. I'm behind the schedule here. But I still want to get this thing done. And I'll tell you, it scares the hell out of me, especially when I keep going back and forth about this one. I'm so close to graduating, I can taste it, I can smell it. I'm drooling over the damn thing. And yet, so far away. But I have to take care of what I got to take care of. I got to deal with what I got to deal with. I'm not liking it. That being said, of not liking things, I follow a few people here and there. I track them on YouTube because some things I'm interested in, other things I'm scratching my head, asking myself, what the hell am I getting this thing in the first place? I mean, this is none of my damn affair, and yet I feel like a weirded out paparazzi trying to find the next thing going on. It's like, oh my God, is there anything else real going on that matters the most? Someone else is already having conniption fits and having issues concerning about their family lifestyle. And the next thing I hear is somebody saying, oh boy, there's somebody got nailed with a hook or something like that. Now I got to publicize this damn thing. It's like, oh my God, we're doing a Princess Diana crap. We're following this thing like crazy. We're going to make this into a public thing because what? Because you need the fucking numbers? Or you need money from people? Good Lord. Yeah, case in point. Somebody's going to be trying to follow what's happening with Nicolas Cage's family at this point. Let's just make this population. I mean, let's make it popular here. Yeah, firing a warning shot, guys. Sometimes when you're reading the TMZ stuff, you're either reading it for you're bored and then you see some of these articles about somebody else having the family issues. I'm like, is it my business or not to keep track of a celebrity having issues in their own family? Is it my responsibility? Is it my job to follow this crap? Or am I totally brain dead in this situation watching this shit? I gotta be brain dead watching this stuff. There are things happening in I try to follow some of the politics, and I'm hearing more and more pushback on a lot of things. Uh, I'm hearing people trying to make conniption fits that shouldn't be there in the first place. Speaker of the House is about to get nailed again by Marjorie Taylor Greene. What else is new? And then you got another lunatic from Colorado who still wants to go after Biden again, wants to get an impeachment vote going. There's no crimes, there's no misdemeanors. But they claim they got the evidence, but they don't have the evidence. They've already been going through hearing after hearing, and nobody's been doing it because there's nothing there. They tried to do the paperwork and pass it through the House, but the Senate won't pick up on it because there's nothing there. So they dropped the damn thing. And they went after Hunter Biden, and now Hunter Biden is going after people. He's suing, including one particular congresswoman who decided to make gross in a hearing because she wants the points from her own damn voters, or for whatever kind of head game she's playing. She's humiliating people left and right. This one should have been thrown out, but no, it's on record. It's on congressional record. So now she's going to get nailed by a lawsuit. I'm waiting on that one. How does this affect me? Because it's going to be affecting our voting situation in the first place. People are still devoted to Trump. It's not even funny. Hence, Meet the Press. Senator Tim Scott was getting grilled on Meet the Press. He's still a Trumper. He's pure Trumper. He doesn't think anything else is going to happen but Trump getting back in office, and he supports it. He wants to be the vice president. He wants. I swear, he's like every other damn Trumplican out there who's pining for a job. It's like seeing these demons lining up over here, trying to find who's going to be the best man to Lucifer. I swear, it's like seeing this kind of soap opera happening here. Because these lunatics are affecting our votes, our way of life at this point. They bitch and gripe about students protesting what's happening in the Middle East. They're trying to tell us what's going on. But no, the media pundits, and not to mention all these other Trumplicans, are saying, no, 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 you can't do that. It's not the American way. I hate to tell these assholes, but in the history, it is the American way. Deal with it. Pisses me off. Okay, let's get on to something a little bit more scientific and not fantasy at this point. We have two competing aerospace companies trying to get a viable spaceship going, including a potential ship that can service the International Space Station a hell of a lot better. One company's been out of it for a long while another private company, who's gotten a lesser contract for the United States, has made good on its promises. They've gotten the cargo and they've got the human cargo being flights working at this point. The Dragon flight and Falcon, they're working. The engines are working. They've got a history now. They haven't got anything blown up yet, which I'm waiting for at this point. I am waiting for that. And why do you say I'm waiting for that? Because comparing it back to what the government had been trying to do back in the 60s, trying to rush production. They rushed productions concerning about the Mercury, not to mention the Gemini, and then there was the Apollo. And the Apollo really had the major issues on this one. Mercury, not so much. But, yeah, actually, they did, Mercury. Yeah. There was one particular capsule, I think, Gus Grissom's, concerned about explosive bolts. He lost his ship. Saved the astronaut, but lost his ship. And Grissom had this stigma all over him. The stink on him. Because I think he went back in Gemini to do the mission over there. And he was also slated to do the Apollo. And he got picked for mission commander for Apollo 1. And there was Roger Chaffee, a rookie, getting into it. Hadn't been through Gemini, but has been picked for the Apollo flight. And then there was Ed White. Ed White was a Gemini veteran and doing a plugs out test where they were testing the oxygen pressure at at there's so much science fiction no scientific data on this one here. Certain level of sea level that they're doing the plugs out test would affect pressure both on the outside and inside the capsule. But they want to make sure that the capsule's airtight. So they forced a lot of pure oxygen through the system to force any issues of any construction uh, deviancy. But the problem is, what the hatch kept opening and closing was really making some wires chafed to a point where there was going to be a spark, and then there was flammable material concerning about Velcro patches, which caused a fire in the capsule, caused a lot of smoke and heat, and they cooked and smoked out. They died. They had to redesign the capsule all over again to make sure that it wasn't going to happen again. They barely managed to get the ships out to get the job done before a deadline was going to be reached. But the Apollo program was considered a success, despite the tragedy. And despite test pilots, through one reason or another, crashing and dying because of things happening to their ships, their aircraft. I remember how many billions of dollars that the government forced into other companies to make sure that they're profitable, but that they're working with the space program all to get the man on the moon first and then maybe do a little science, and then after that the budget was dried up. Apollo had to focus on reusable Apollo equipment to do the Skylab, but they were also focusing a lot on getting a space shuttle transportation system up. They call it a space transportation system. It's still called a space shuttle anyway. And for 30 years they had that program working, despite two major crew losses. One because of an O-ring that the engineer should have thought of, but they didn't. Even the designer should have figured this one out. A freak cold spell happened in Florida during one day back in 1985, where an O-ring, a rubberized O-ring, was supposed to keep pressure, supposed to keep the sealant going. When heated, the rubber would expand and blocking out certain gases from going from one compartment to another compartment in a solid rocket booster. Nobody expected a freeze out. And some of the scientists afterwards and the engineers were figuring this stuff out. One of them actually was testifying and figured the whole thing, it was telling the public about this one, that extreme cold weather made this O-ring brittle as hell and it wouldn't recover fast enough for the launch. So gases were exchanged, heated gases were exchanged from one compartment to another compartment, and then what you had was a catastrophic explosion. As for the Columbia, they are constantly putting tiles back on board the space shuttles because going through space, the manufactured tiles had to be placed and secured enough to allow the ship to land. But it was becoming more and more costly to keep the space shuttle program maintained. There's the probe concerning about the cost overrun was the maintenance on this complicated machine to keep it up in space long enough and land it in Earth safe enough. But unfortunately, when you had some tiles ripped off during a launch, it produced holes underneath the wings. They couldn't get a space shuttle up there fast enough, or an auxiliary ship up there ready to rescue their ass. They came back to Earth in pieces. The gases went through the wings, ripped off more tiles, and tore the ship apart into pieces. That's right, there had to be more extensive testing on these things. And because of those, it really put a black eye on the space shuttle system. They really had to invent some techniques on how to make sure that if the ship was going to suffer that kind of catastrophic disaster before getting to the International Space Station during flight, they would need to have the ship looked over. So they invented a maneuver to flip it on its side. Actually, not on its side, but from head to toe. Hell of a lot of maneuvering on that one, that's for damn sure. But they made sure that the ships were safe before they came back down to Earth. Because at the time, the only way to get to the International Space Station to drop off astronauts was using the Space Shuttle Transportation System. And we needed something fast to get up there regarding commercial aspects of it. We had to depend upon the Russian ships to deliver astronauts. They had to learn Russian language to work the ships. We had to have international cooperation with the Russian Space Agency. The problem was, being political enemies as they are, once in a while we'll have European space crews going through the Russian Space Agency to put people on the International Space Station. But now, since we have a commercial viable privatization of a ship that has tested itself, proven itself to be safe and reliable to a point right now, we're dependent upon a commercial space ride to get up there and back. Hence SpaceX, the Falcon, and the Dragon space capsule. The Falcon, this was innovative because we didn't think about it and we didn't have the technology available at the time. Maybe they had the ideas for it, but they just didn't develop it to where you have a ship, an engine that launches the space shuttle, the space capsule up in space, but able to fly itself down and land on a landing platform out in the sea to be salvaged, repurposed, and attached to another Dragon capsule and ready for launch. So, as much as I may despise the crap out of Musk because of his own mouth and what he's done for Twitter and showing up to be less than a worthy human being, I have to give it to this guy regarding engineering skills that he has in his people. I'm not quite sure about him at all, but his people apparently have the engineering skills and innovation going on to keep these ships going. They've got a track record. Now we've got Boeing, who's taken more years and more money to develop their own spaceship, their Starliner. They've already made an unmanned test, I think last year, with a Snoopy doll and a couple of other human forms going around the moon and coming right back to Earth. Now they're going to be doing a human launch tonight at the Cape Kennedy, or Cape Canaveral. I call it Kennedy still. Well, we'll see if this particular test run with 2 people in it are going to survive. If it runs okay and the people are fine and everything tests out okay, then maybe Boeing can get off its dead ass and get this ship going and land people on the moon. I know Musk wants to land his ship over there, but It's taken how many explosions he's lost on his test ship? And I keep thinking about the same way that NASA had spent with the contracting other companies to come across a safe engineering way of launching a ship up there. Musk and his crew have been trying to get this ship, the actually not Starlink, no, Starlink, a monster of a ship they've got. I'll get it yet one of these here days. Hold on. I don't even know why the hell. Okay. All right. What do we got? Looks like a damn arrowhead. Starlink with its starship. That's what they called it, a starship. The problem is with this arrowhead starship of theirs. They keep having engine issues that either makes this damn thing blow up or lose control and just fly off and never land. But they keep testing and keep blowing it up. Now, if they can get just to get the thing up there and then come right back down in one piece, I keep trying to crunch the numbers on this one. As I said before, Musk has got a crew that's working their asses off of keeping these ships going, trying to figure out how to have their starship, their Arrow starship. Might as well call it the Quiver. I think that's the thing that holds the arrows in it. But this Arrow ship, this arrowhead of theirs, they can just keep it going without blowing it up and landing in one piece. That's the thing I'm looking for. That I will celebrate. And once they have that, then they got to put human conditions in there. Conditions, shit, they got to put humans in there to see whether or not it's going to be acceptable for human space flight. And the thing I'll be looking for is whether or not they're going to be launching their ship to the moon and back, bringing it back home in one piece without it blowing up. Or even blowing up on a re-entry. I'll be looking forward to that one. But tonight is going to be the debut again of a human space flight for Boeing and its little project there. Is their rocket going to do it? I don't know. We're going to see what happens. You got the aerospace to condition. They got the aerospace section that deals with commercial and military flights concerning about their aircraft. Is one thing. But this one for rockets, they took over Rocketdyne a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken. Rockwell, Rocketdyne, God no. Rocketdyne, I miss it. The history of these guys used to be called North American Aviation. Rockwell International. I feel so damn old remembering this stuff. Okay, for what Wikipedia would say, Rocketdyne was founded by North American Aviation. North American Aviation was the division that was working with the space program with NASA, trying to get the capsules up. They were the ones designing the capsules, making sure the thing flew. They became part of Rockwell back in 1967 through 1996. And then Boeing. '96 to 2005. And then the Rocketdyne division was sold to United Technologies Corporation, becoming Pratt& Whitney Rocketdyne as part of a Pratt& Whitney in 2013. Pratt& Whitney Rocketdyne was sold to Gemcore, merged with Aerojet to form Aerojet Rocketdyne. There had been a test plant, actually, there had been a manufacturing plant in the San Fernando Valley out in Canoga Park. They used to have an engine of one of the Apollos out there, a nozzle of it. When you drive by the plant, it would be out in front. And then they started working with the space shuttle, so they actually had a shuttle nozzle out there. And that was a landmark. The company was going through so many changes during those decades. They got sold off, moved off, building collapsed, area torn out. Made me feel like I was seeing history come and go. We used to have airplane manufacturing companies before we did the rockets. I understood that there was manufacturing plants for fighters, prop jobs, and then we did the jets. Aerospace and space exploration. When I was a young kid, this was my shtick, and not to mention every time I kept coming across Rocketdyne, coming up Canoga, there would have been a couple of buildings out there on Canoga Avenue from between Sherman Way all the way through Victory. No, Sherman Way, no, a little about Chatsworth or yeah, something like that. Canoga was the pathway for both uh, aeronautical engineering buildings. Rockwell had two buildings going on. I remember coming across them left and right. One of them didn't have advertised, but the other one did with a space shuttle engine on it. I miss seeing that. A long time ago, I had seen this picture. I had seen this picture, and it was beautiful. Because I always wanted to step in front of it and get a picture with me in front of this space shuttle engine. I was part of this history, one way or another. I mean, if you were a fan of it, you were part of history. You were seeing it, you were observing it. I had talked to an engineer at one time in my youth, back in the late 70s, going through elementary school and seeing an engineer I didn't know, but he said he worked for NASA. He could have been working for Rockwell, but I think he was working for NASA. Anyway, I was going to be watching a movie called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Never seen it before, but Mom knew I was a sci-fi nut. And it would be interesting to see this movie. But before we went over there, we went out for lunch before we were going to see the movie. And I had to get me a toy. There is a Woolworths out there. We went out there shopping, and I got myself a Learjet. I needed something to play with. But I didn't get me a Learjet. I got me a space shuttle. I didn't know what the hell this damn thing was. It was a big, huge, bulky plastic thing in my hand. It was two doors open up, and you have this plastic space lab thing in there. And it said Enterprise on it. I mean, the thing it could just roll. It's something it could roll on the ground. It was a toy for a kid to play with. Did he actually understood that he was handling history in his hand? Or that by hanging about over at Bob's Big Boy, waitress is keeping an eye on me while Ma was doing something for a few minutes and coming back. And then she discovers I met a friend over there. Kind of rattled her cage, especially when you started rattling up space stuff to her. We met this guy also over at Either was Close Encounters. No, it was Close Encounters first, and then it was the lunch. Next thing Ma and I know that we're getting mail from uh, NASA, public relations officers. We're getting tech briefs. Old-fashioned tech briefs, paperwork. I mean, the big, huge things of engineering stuff. I'm a kid looking at this stuff, and I didn't know what the hell it was. Growing up as a kid to a teenager, I still didn't understand. I'm looking at engineering specs on something that they actually had. Worse off, there was a public relations handbook out there concerning about the space shuttle program. I lost this damn thing years ago. Lent it to somebody, and then it disappeared, and then gone. But this book had a lot of information about the space shuttle program. I would have been surprised if the Russians happened to pick up a copy of this damn thing and made their and based their space shuttle on us because of our own designs. They had to redesign it a little bit, but they made their own space shuttle. Went up once, and that was it. They had an airplane that transported the space shuttle that lifted up in the air and just blasted off. And then the space shuttle would come back down to Earth. They had a launch mechanism of using one of their own largest transports to make sure this thing flew off into space and back. These days, it's a rusted piece of crap that people have seen pictures of floating around on the internet. But this back in the 80s and 90s, this would have been a major competitor to the space shuttle program of ours. Aerospace was still part of me, a little bit. I mean, for a long while, I tried to keep track of some of the stuff happening out in Mojave. We got testing constantly happening out in Edwards Air Force Base. They're still working on aircraft that makes going through the sound barrier a little easier on us down on the ground because every time the sound barrier is broken, when there's a certain speed met and it exceeded the sound waves of that ship, of that aircraft going through the barrier, and there is a barrier of sorts, that repercussion is heard and felt down below. There is a thing. They called it the demon. Now, when they did engineering testing of rockets back in the 40s, they got uh, German engineers who were testing out rockets, combining with our engineers who were testing out rockets. They were developing faster airplanes using thrust technology. And Yeager was one of those astronauts who broke a barrier and survived, including the aircraft, which is still part of Smithsonian Institute. And Yeager, God rest his soul, God bless his soul, helped usher it in. He and other test pilots like them who risked their lives of breaking that barrier, chasing that demon left and right. Things that fall into place. You ever seen the movie The Right Stuff? Maybe Hollywood versions of it. But Tom Wolfe wrote this book about the early days of space shuttle, space travel, uh, just test pilots, all the way up to Mercury and maybe a little beyond, I think. But we saw the movie back in the 80s concerning about the space program, about test flights, about Yeager, and about the Mercury 7. That movie I kept watching throughout my life. I loved it. I hadn't seen it in a long while. But the music still sticks in your head. Every time I keep seeing an aircraft flying like crazy, or maybe even hearing about the rockets being launched, that thing would go off in my head on some occasions. Anyway, to me that's more important than hearing something about someone else's publicized life that turns into a proper paparazzi feedback here. So we've got a testing happening around evening time, East Coast time. Boeing's going to send back is going to send up its its ship up there. To me, that's the most important thing right now is the launch. If Boeing can get their two pilots, both NASA vets, and they come back alive with the capsule, Boeing will be on its way of getting its own space program going. They're not the first, but they're trying to be more careful about it. But keep this in mind, Elon Musk's corporation, SpaceX, had already proven that commercial spaceflight is possible and active right now. The one thing I am waiting for on this one is human activity to make a mistake at this point where lives are going to be lost. SpaceX has been working on it to make sure that that doesn't happen, that their ship will go up, people will come back home safely, and they got recoverable engine and space capsule. But the thing that's going to matter most is how much sweat and blood and brain cells they've sweated out to make sure a ship can actually go to the moon, land safely, and come back to Earth, if possible. Being commercial and not government, not represented by government. Part two on this one.